11:36 a.m. Central Time this morning, 11:36 p.m. in Baikonur, where Russian and American dignitaries, guests, and family will be watching the events unfold from a hotel not far from the launch site in Kazakhstan.
This is Baikonur.
This, once again, is a live look at the launch pad right now atop the rocket, and within the Soyuz MS-11 spacecraft again are NASA's Anne McClain, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, and Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos, now under 16 minutes from launch. A little more about the Soyuz spacecraft. It's comprised of 3 modules, 23.5 feet long, and weighs 15,700 pounds. The descent module in the middle is situated in the middle of the Soyuz vehicle, contains customized seats for the crew members during launch, entry, and landing, and contains all of the controls and displays necessary for flight. It also contains life support systems, batteries for re-entry and landing, and the parachutes and soft landing rocket engines that slow the Soyuz down before touchdown when the Soyuz lands in Kazakhstan. There are 8 hydrogen peroxide thrusters located on the module that are used to control the spacecraft's orientation or attitude during the descent until parachute deployment. It also has guidance, navigation, and control system to maneuver the vehicle during the descent phase of the mission. This descent module weighs over 6,000 pounds with a habitable volume of 141 cubic feet. Approximately 110 pounds of payload can be returned to Earth in this module. The descent module is the only portion of those 3 that you saw earlier that survives the return to Earth. You're seeing the hatch open to the top portion. This is the orbital module. Connects the descent module via a pressurized hatch. It is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around during the flight to the International Space Station. Has a volume of 230 cubic feet with a docking mechanism hatch and rendezvous antenna located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antenna is used by the automated docking system, which uses radar to maneuver towards the station for docking, again scheduled 6 hours from launch. There is also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take manual measurements of distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of failure of the rendezvous radar system. That last module in the back is the propulsion module. Houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communication and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they are deployed, the 2 solar arrays that you see there are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn, along with the orbital module. The solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire spacecraft serves not only as the crew transport vehicle to and from the station, but also serves as an emergency return vehicle in the event the crew should have to leave the station unexpectedly. Back at a live view of Site 1, the pad Soyuz MS-11, all systems looking go so far, on track for an on-time launch at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. To prepare for things, chewing in the work of the danger is. Everybody circling his votaries, negative, negative. Everybody waiting for the fall of man. Everybody praying for the end of time. Everybody hoping they could be the one. Not going to run, not going for this. Whip, run me like a race, hold me like a rip, break me down and build me up. A group of NASA representatives is there in Baikonur, ready to watch the launch from just a short distance away from the launch pad. For an update on activities over there, we now go to NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius.
Gary, just 7.5 weeks have passed since that day in October when you were last here. the day of the Soyuz launch abort that denied 2 crew members a chance to reach the International Space Station and triggered a plethora of replanning by NASA, Roscosmos, and the rest of the international partnership. Today, at the start of what should be a December to remember, a multinational crew is poised to pick up where the last crew left off, returning the station to a 6-person crew capability for the next 17 days as the station program gets back on track. It was 22 below zero Fahrenheit in December 2012 when Chris Hadfield launched into space from here, the last time a Canadian astronaut flew into space. Not as bad today for David Saint-Jacques, but the temperatures will not hit the freezing mark here in the late afternoon, and it is a frosty day for the start of this 6.5-month mission. A large throng of VIPs and family members are on hand today. NASA represented by Bill Gerstenmaier, the Associate Administrator for Human Exploration Operations, Steve Jerzik, NASA's Associate Administrator, and ISS Program Manager Kirk Shireman. The head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, is here. And among the Canadian dignitaries on hand is royalty. Former astronaut Julie Payette is here. Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Julie Payette, the Governor General of Canada, the Vice-Regal representative of the Canadian monarch, who is none other than Queen Elizabeth II. Rockets and royalty in the Central Asian desert as we gear up for a crucial launch to the International Space Station. That's it from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Now back to you at Mission Control in Houston.
That was NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius looking at the spacecraft poised on Site 1 of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, ready for launch on time. As he has reported, everything's looking go for an on-time launch at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. Again, a brisk day over there, about 24 degrees Fahrenheit, just under -4 centigrade. We're getting in-cabin views. You're getting a live view of the astronauts inside the Soyuz spacecraft that's now currently on the launch pad at Site 1. Over there on the left side of the screen, you can see in the right seat with the American flag on the left side of her arm is NASA astronaut Anne McClain. Above her is the zero-G indicator, as explained before. The Dragon it's a baby dragon chosen by her son, being hugged by a Christmas elf, one of the 2 zero-G indicators aboard. You can see Oleg Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, flicking some switches as he undergoes the final steps before launch, just about 8 minutes 22 seconds before liftoff today. He'll be the Soyuz commander, and to his left, just off screen, is Canadian Space Agency astronaut David Saint-Jacques. His zero-G indicator, you can see the zero-G indicator above Anne McClain, the elf with the baby dragon. David Saint-Jacques' indicator is a raccoon chosen by his family. Getting good calls from Mission Control over in Moscow. Everything's still looking good for an on-time liftoff today. Sun is slowly setting over in Baikonur. The sun set for a sunset at 6:04 p.m. local time there. We'll still be seeing the Soyuz liftoff during the daytime this morning Central Time. Now under 7 minutes 30 seconds from launch. At this time, the gyros and the in-flight readiness and recorders have been activated. We'll be seeing a series of other milestones as we reach the 7-minute mark. This is where the pre-launch operations are complete.
Antares, the readiness is 1 minute. Copy all. Everything is nominal on board. We are ready. Everything goes per schedule, and we will be expecting your reports. And please activate video camera that is located near the commander.
Now getting another in-cabin view, David St. Jacques, you can see in the left seat the zero-G indicator toy raccoon above him, chosen by his family. Now under 7 minutes from launch, getting calls that all pre-launch operations are complete, everything looking good so far. At this point in the countdown, the Soyuz's first and second stage engines are ready for launch, and telemetry has been received from the rocket, indicating that all primary and backup systems are ready for launch. At the time of Soyuz launch, the International Space Station will be over central Kazakhstan, southwest of the capital of Astana, at an altitude of 252 statute miles. The space station will be 405 statute miles ahead of the Soyuz. Launch is precisely timed for the moment when the Earth's rotation will place the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane of the orbit of the International Space Station, now 5 minutes, 30 seconds from launch. Again, a series of milestones following the pre-launch operations. The next will be when the launch key to be inserted. This is an actual key.
Combustion chamber nitrogen purge.
At this time, the launch key has been inserted into the launch bucker. Yes, it's a real key. It transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. Now just 4 minutes, 12 seconds from launch.
Onboard measurement system is activated by Run 2 command.
At this time, the onboard systems have been switched to onboard control. The commander's cockpit displays and controls have been activated, and the crew members are closing their helmets, which puts them on suit oxygen. Now just 3 minutes from launch.
Booster propellant tank pressurization initiated.
At this time, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines are purged with nitrogen to fireproof them by removing the vapors of fuel and oxidizer. The booster tank is now being pressurized for flight. This optimizes the flow of fuel and helps to add structural support to the rocket. Now 2 minutes from launch. less than 1 minute to launch, there'll be a series of other commands, and then you'll see those umbilical towers, there's two, start retracting from the Soyuz vehicle prior to launch.
Vehicle to internal power.
Vehicle is now on internal power. You can see the first umbilical tower retracted.
Auto sequence initiated.
Auto sequence is initiated. That second tower now retracting 10 seconds from launch.
Second umbilical tower set raise.
Engines have started and are now at the preliminary thrust level, throttling up.
Engines at maximum thrust, liftoff.
And liftoff. We have liftoff of Anne McClain, David St. Jacques, and Oleg Kononenko blasting through the Kazakh sky to the International Space Station.
Copy.
Everything looking good so far. Good first stage performance. Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust.
Copy. Everything is fine on board. 30 seconds into flight. All parameters are nominal.
30 seconds in, everything's still looking good. First stage will burn for 2 minutes. First 2 minutes and 6 seconds of the flight.
Vehicle stabilization is steady. Copy. 50 seconds. Chamber pressure is nominal. 60 seconds.
Everything looking good. Vehicle is stable. Good first stage performance. The vehicle now traveling over 1,100 miles per hour.
60 seconds into flight. Everything is nominal. 80 seconds. All parameters are nominal. Copy. Everything is
1 minute 30 seconds into the flight. Everything's still looking good. The stage again will burn for until 1 minute 58 seconds into the flight, and you'll see those 4 strap-on boosters jettison.
100 seconds. Copy. $110 seconds.
Escape tower has been jettisoned, and those 4 strap-on boosters also jettisoned. They've completed their job and will drop away at an altitude of 28 miles.
Confirm.
100. Now transitioning to an animation, you can see from the launch pad losing sight of the Soyuz, but getting good second stage performance.
We're feeling fine, and everything is excellent on board. Copy, and vehicle is stable. 150 seconds into flight.
Second stage, this core stage, still performing well. The launch shroud has been jettisoned, revealing the Soyuz underneath.
Launch shroud jettison confirmed.
This second stage will continue to burn until 4 minutes 43 seconds into the flight.
170 seconds into flight. All systems are operating nominally. Copy.
Everything looking good. This second stage providing somewhere between 178,000 and 222,000 pounds of thrust.
Seconds into flight. Second stage. Thrusters are operating nominally. Copy.
Everything's still looking good. 1 minute left of this second stage. Right in the middle of the animation, you'll see a lattice structure. That will be where the third stage will start to burn, begin a hot staging technique, start burning before the end of the second stage, and actually push that second stage away.
250 seconds into flight. Pitch your roll parameters are all nominal. Copy.
Everything's still looking good. About 10 more seconds of this second stage burning.
Two 280 seconds into flight. Second stage separation confirmed.
And we have confirmation of a good second stage separation. The third stage is lit. Will burn for about 4 minutes and 2 seconds, providing 67,000 pounds of thrust.
200 seconds. 300 seconds. Copy, and we're doing well. 310 seconds into flight. Vehicle is steady.
Five minutes, 30 seconds into the flight. We're in the third stage now. Everything's still looking good.
Seconds into flight. Third stage thrusters are operating nominally.
The third stage will continue to burn until about 8 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight.
Manning. 350 seconds into flight. Everything is nominal. Everything is excellent on board the Soyuz. The crew is doing well.
Good reports from the crew on board. They're feeling well as the third stage continues to burn, now 6 minutes and 15 seconds into the flight.
Four 400 seconds into flight. Because stabilization is steady. Copy.
Seven minutes into the flight, everything's still looking good.
Four 430 seconds into flight. All thrusters are operating nominally. Copy. And we're feeling well.
Still getting good reports from the crew, feeling well as we're 7 minutes 30 seconds into the flight. The velocity now almost 13,500 miles per hour. Once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to orbit and the module is separated, a series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare the Soyuz for orbital operations. These stored commands, called time-tagged commands, allow many of the Soyuz systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise times stored in those computers. 8 minutes into the flight, everything's still looking good. Again, this third stage burns until 8 minutes 45 seconds.
490 seconds into flight. Copy. .500 seconds into flight.
8 minutes 30 seconds into the flight, still looking good. 15 more seconds until third stage cutoff and separation.
520 seconds. Third stage separation is confirmed.
And we have confirmation of third stage separation. Single liquid-fueled engine has shut down and dropped away at an altitude of 126 statute miles.
Copy. Congratulations with the...
Everything's still looking good. The third stage is performing an avoidance maneuver by opening a valve in its liquid oxygen tank.
Thank you very much for your support. Antares, this is Moscow.
And we have confirmation of the spacecraft separation, Soyuz capsule and crew safely in orbit. The spacecraft is automatically executing its pre-program commands to deploy the antennas and solar arrays.
Stage separation, and you are go to close RPV-1 and RPV-2 airflow regulators. Copy, it's in work. RPV-1 and 2 valves have been closed, and no issues with the indicator panel. Copy, and please proceed per page 39. Yes, copy, we'll put it in work.
И аккуратно запускаем АКГ.
And you can carefully start AKG. Monitoring the vehicle section. It has been initiated. Copy.
Команда на включение ТВ. Принято.
TV activation command send. Copy.
Контролируйте прохождение РДР. Принято. Выбрал формат сближения.
Please monitor RDR, enable dynamic mode. Yes, copy, in work.
Есть включение второго комплекта курс. Принято.
First, second
Принимаем картинку.
set activation confirmed. Copy. And we are receiving the image now. Copy. Repress is deactivated now. Copy. Repress deactivated, and we're standing by for the first set of measurements. Repress is deactivated. 174208 796 810. This is BO pressure 871.
Crew now working through the many stages to now that they are in orbit. Again, the third stage separation and cutoff is confirmed. Also confirmed the deployment of the antennas and solar arrays. Crew working through the steps to, after getting into this first orbit, to ensure a safe flight to the International Space Station. It's a fast-track 4-orbit rendezvous. They'll arrive in just about 6 hours. Also got confirmation from Commander aboard the International Space Station, Alexander Gerst, who actually was able to see the launch and the third stage separation of the crew members as the International Space Station was flying right overhead above the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
2.0.
About that time, the International Space Station was 252 statute miles over northeast China, now separated by 1,586 miles between the International Space Station and the Soyuz.
18.0, 26264.
Control of the spacecraft will continue to be monitored by Mission Control over in Moscow. Here's a live balcony view there. Control of the spacecraft will be overseen by that center just outside of Moscow.
Check out indicators and now. Set 1, of course, is operating nominally, and EKV inhibit is confirmed. Copy. Antares, this compass will be over at 1452. 1452. Please note down the next compass start time. 1603 is the start time of the next compass. Yes, 1603, and it will be over at 1626. 1626, yes, that's correct. And you're going to activate and deactivate COM assets manually. Copy. I confirm activation of set 1. And course string 1 is operating nominally. Copy. During the next compass, we're going to do manual control. Check out and test. Okay. Maneuver. Display is selected. Copy. And EKV inhibit time for the next orbit is as follows: 160600.
160600.
160600. Yes, correct. And this is page 45. Copy.
И, значит, время ТСР можете записать.
And there's our time.
A great launch of Anne McLean, David St. Jacques, and Oleg Kononenko, who are now in their preliminary orbit, going through some of the steps to make their way to the orbiting complex just 6 hours from now. 4 orbits around the Earth. The liftoff was right on time, 5:31 a.m. Central Time.
Could you please deactivate?
We'll wait for some of those launch replays. In the meantime, we're taking questions using the hashtag AskNASA on Twitter. We've had a few come in during today's show. This one comes from TranC2, asking how the International Space Station operational schedule has been shifted since October's incident, and when is the current crew expected to return to Earth. A lot of operations have happened since Alexei Ovchinin of Roscosmos and Nick Hague of NASA aborted their ascent to the International Space Station on October 11th. There's been some investigations and collaboration between Roscosmos and NASA to shift the schedule just a little bit. If you take a look at the International Space Station right now, there's actually 4 visiting vehicles currently attached to the International Space Station. 2 of them are the Russian Progress vehicle that carry crew supplies, as well as the Northrop Grumman Cygnus 10 that's currently attached to the Nadir port, or the Earth-facing side of the Unity module. Also, you can see there the Soyuz MS-09 that carried the current crew aboard of Serena Aunen-Chancellor, Alexander Gerst, and Sergei Prokopyev. A lot of these launches were shifted around to ensure the safe delivery and continuation of continuous habitation of the International Space Station. The crew that just launched today is set to also dock today, December 3rd. There'll be 6 crew members on board the International Space Station until the crew of the MS-09 that you just saw there. Again, Aunen-Chancellor, Gerst, and Prokopyev are set to depart December 19th U.S. time, December 20th over in Kazakhstan. We have another question from Edion, who's asking, why is NASA always using the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for the launch to the International Space Station? The Soyuz vehicle that we just saw launch today is currently the only human-rated vehicle that can provide transportation from Earth to the International Space Station. That is true now, but come 2019, we'll start looking at some commercial crew launches, beginning with some test missions, starting with the SpaceX Crew Dragon and, of course, the Boeing Starliner, set to conduct a series of test missions, some of which include sending crew to the International Space Station. And again, we can start looking forward to that next year.
Heat thermal sensors at the specified time. Copy. Antares, and orbital parameters are as follows: 88.7, inclination is 51.6, altitude.
Getting some great questions from hashtag AskNASA as we wait for some of those replays to come in. You can see the launch of the MS-11 crew launch once again. But in the meantime, keep sending in those good questions using the hashtag AskNASA. This one comes from Terry. How long does it take from launch time to boarding the International Space Station? You can check that out today. Again, launch was at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. Our coverage for the docking of that vehicle to the International Space Station will begin at 10:30 a.m. Central Time, looking for a 6-hour rendezvous to the station at 11:36 a.m. Central Time. Soyuz MS-11 will be docking to the Poisk module, which is on the space-facing side. Shortly after, we'll take a quick break and then come back on at 12:30 p.m. Central Time to begin our hatch opening and welcome ceremony coverage. That hatch opening time is scheduled for just about 1:35 p.m. Central Time.
Nominally, everything has deployed.
So when it's all said and done, you're looking at
Proceed for our schedule.
About 8 hours from the time of launch to the time of opening the hatch and entering the International Space Station.
Is confirmed. 1458. Vessel in attitude is confirmed.
And one more question from Sakura, who's asking how much time it takes to complete all the necessary training required for life aboard the International Space Station. We'll take Anne McClain, for example, who was selected as an astronaut back in 2013. She was an astronaut candidate for the first few years of training, going through some of those preliminary training steps like learning the International Space Station systems, some spacewalking techniques, wilderness and survival training, and T-38 training. That takes about 2 years. She completed that training in July of 2015. She is the first astronaut of the 2013 class to head towards the International Space Station. And this comes just more than 3 years after completing her astronaut candidate training. You're watching the last leg of our coverage for the launch of the Expedition 58 crew aboard the MS-11 Soyuz spacecraft, consisting from left to right in the lower graphic there of Anne McClain of NASA, Oleg Kononenko of Roscosmos, and David Saint-Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency. Launched on time today at 5:31 a.m. Central Time. Had a textbook launch and insertion into orbit. Are now coasting on their way to the International Space Station. Looking for a 4-orbit rendezvous. This takes about 6 hours. You're getting a balcony view from Mission Control Center over in Korolev, just outside of Moscow. We're at the last leg of our launch coverage for today, an on-time launch at 5:31 a.m. Central Time of Anne McClain, David St. Jacques, and Oleg Kononenko, currently in orbit and on their way to the International Space Station. Waiting for some launch replay so you can see the launch once again, but in the meantime, keep sending in questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We have one from Rohit, who's asking, will the present Expedition 57 crew return to Earth on this same MS-11 on December 19th? The crew of MS-11 will, once they arrive to the International Space Station, they'll dock to the Poisk module. This is on the space-facing side. If you were looking at the International Space Station right side up, it would be on the top. Those 3 crew members would be taking their craft to and from the International Space Station. The current crew aboard now, Serena Anand Chancellor, Sergei Prokopyev, and Alexander Gerst will take the Soyuz MS-09, currently on the Rassvet module that you can see there on this graphic. There's 5 visiting vehicles you can see on the graphic. Soyuz MS-11 at the top there, currently on its way to the International Space Station. But the current crew will take the Soyuz MS-09 home on December 19th, U.S. time. We have another question from Shashwat, who's asking, if anything goes wrong during docking, what can the crew of the International Space Station do? Right now, the Soyuz vehicle is communicating with some of the ground stations, the Russian ground stations, and will switch over to the TDRS tracking and data relay satellites as it orbits the Earth. Currently, the Soyuz and the International Space Station over the Pacific Ocean. Once the Soyuz gets a little bit closer to the International Space Station, very close to the docking time, it actually will be able to communicate with the International Space Station. If anything were to go wrong, the crew of the International Space Station on the Russian side of the space station can actually remotely take control of the Soyuz vehicle. Another appropriate question coming from KT asking how the astronauts on the International Space Station spend holidays in space. Of course, early December, the first holiday coming up for the crew will be Christmas. Currently on board the Soyuz is a zero-G indicator, the elf on the shelf, currently hugging a baby dragon. This was an indicator that once the Soyuz was inserted into an orbit around the Earth, that would indicate that they were in fact in microgravity environment. The crew, once on board, docking just 6 hours from now, already have a lot of their holiday items on board, but a few more, including some food, will be on its way to the International Space Station starting tomorrow. The SpaceX CRS-16 is scheduled to lift off from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida tomorrow. On board will be some of the holiday food, including some fresh food that will be delivered to the International Space Station on a 2-day rendezvous, arriving just 2 days later on December 6th. Again, we had a great liftoff today of Anne McClain, David St. Jacques, and Oleg Kononenko, currently in orbit over the Pacific Ocean, chasing down the International Space Station on a 4-orbit rendezvous. We have some replays for you so you can witness that launch, that textbook launch again that we just saw 30 minutes ago.